So, hello and welcome to the Two Medics podcast. My name is Thrusha Gunawardena. I'm a cardiology registrar subspecializing in coronary intervention.
My name's Bethan John. I am a GP trainee, ex-neurosurgery trainee, not specialising in any sort of intervention.
Do you think it's kind of showy that I say that? I'm just like, I don't know what, I think it just kind of is my thing.
I think it would upset the balance of the world if you didn't say that.
Introduce myself that way.
But
It does take...
I have no specialist interest at present.
Well, that means you're of many talents. Well, I have one that couldn't even be described as that. I do find introducing myself in that way does take quite a long time on the telephone, when I'm on call and just kind of like saying that each time.
But I think it's like your brand. And if I needed someone who specialised in intervention,
you'd know who to call.
I would be like, I'm very grateful that I found the correct person.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. When you put it that way. So we should, before we start, give a shout out to our sponsors. So our sponsors are at Scrubs_UK. They put you in Scrubs. So they're comfort-driven scrubs and they produce uniforms for doctors, nurses, vets, dentists. They're designed by chaps that we know well, UK medical professionals. Do you wear scrubs at work?
So now I've just rotated to psych and taking great pleasure in wearing anything but scrubs. Like I still wear clothes, but not scrub clothes. Because my question to you is going to be, is the crotch in the right place?
Well, it depends on what time of day.
It's going dark quite quickly. But there's actually been with the generic scrubs that you find in like the theatre changing rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
I think obviously none of those are made for the female form, shall we say.
Yeah.
So if I get like a pair of XXL trousers because I've got these wondrous birthing hips, like the crotch is then by my knees, and that just...
I see what you mean.
Yeah. So I look forward to understanding and hearing more about the scrubs without the U, actually.
Yeah, well, they are very comfortable. I think they do fit better. Like they do fit better. They kind of feel more like pajamas.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So they're kind of, I wouldn't say that they're kind of super high, like they're not kind of like leggings or anything,
yeah, but it's like a lounge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they're quite nice. I quite like wearing them on nights, and I just don't really want to go back. So I go into nights next week, and I'm definitely going to be wearing them for that. And the other thing that I found was quite good is that they dry quite quickly, and they're quite easy to kind of put in the tumble dryer. Yeah, they do, like zip pockets and stuff, which is, one of the really, like, it makes me kind of like a little bit irrationally angry. You know, when you like lean over and then your phone drops out your pocket and scrubs?
I was just going to say the same because I crushed the back of my phone within a month.
It's so annoying. So yeah, they've got lots of quite handy pockets. So if you use our promo code, which is TWOMEDICS10, then you'll get 10% off. Do check them out. We've been busy this week. Been very busy.
Yeah, there's been a lot to choose from. A lot.
Yeah. So do you want to start us off?
Yes, because this is hilarious to me. So robot carers, I didn't know it was a thing.
No.
So Rosie posted a quote, must have been from an article.
In the Times, obviously.
Well, she's a subscriber. And that's our source of any Times article.
Exactly.
But yeah, Rosie's caption, it's enough to make you weep. But this quote from the article states, but robot carers could soon be coming to Britain too. Both Steve Barclay, the health secretary, and Michael Gove, the levelling up secretary, which I still don't know what that is. It makes me think of...
Yeah.
Have visited Shintomi looking for fresh ideas to tackle the social care crisis in this country. So I had a little bit of a look, and because I don't have Times access, there was an article about how in Japan, which has the largest population of elderly people, they have some sort of like robot carers. In what capacity, I don't know. But all I could think of was the state of NHS IT. Imagine.
Oh, can you imagine?
Robots. We've literally just moved on from Windows XP. Like literally just... What type of robots would we have in this country looking?
It'd be awful, wouldn't it? They'd be like repurposed ones, and like you'd be getting the F1 to like reboot them, and it'd be like, have you got a robot Hoover? One of those?
No. I'm fascinated by them, but no, I've not branched out into the RoboVac yet.
I mean, we bought one as we bought into that gimmick, but I think it's a bit rubbish. Yeah.
Video once of one that was like trying to escape out the front door, and then they were like, what?
Really? Becoming like sentient.
Yeah. But yeah, no, exactly. So you know how hard it is to like find a laptop or a computer on the ward.
Oh yeah.
The computers on wheels, the cows, they're never, they either don't have a mouse attached or they're not plugged in. Like,
Yeah.
what would that be like with robots?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
just dread to think.
And what happened because they're doing it because they don't want to pay people. I mean, the kind of pay for carers is so terrible, right? So they
It's
think that
awful. Yeah.
blowing like these robots are obviously going to be crazy, crazy, crazy expensive.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen when the robots like turn around and like, oh, we want more pay, and they start to strike, and then form a
They're becoming
collective, and then
sentient, man, isn't it? This is the
exactly.
thing. Like, yeah. So
So
I don't know. It's just typical Tory, though, isn't it? Like, we don't want to pay people, and so we can't recruit people. So let's literally just buy robots, which will cost a lot more.
mm,
Like industrial action has cost them more than what we asked for with pay restoration. It's
mm,
just that counterintuitive. Like, do they think it looks good? Because I don't know. Like, robot carers
yeah,
strike me as something that looks good. I think someone
no,
someone someone commented and said, I think it was Molly, said, "Isn't this the plot of iRobot?"
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
God, it can't end well. And then like
Uh,
even like the really cool robots you see I've seen like even like those kind of like videos of robots kind of kicking a football and then like
yes.
awkwardly like stumbling over. I'm like, how are
Yeah.
you going to rely on that to like help transfer someone from like a bed to a chair and things like how
Yeah.
is that going to
Like,
work? Like,
and what do you program? Like, oh, this is the maneuver for like wiping a bum. This is like, like
yeah,
what?
if you get that
Like,
wrong, if you're a couple of
it'd
it
be the best day of your life, or the
makes me think.
unexpected, I guess.
Yeah, and how
I,
soon? If you've got robots doing stuff like that, then I mean, it's going to be so soon that you'll get people buying robots off license for all kinds of other things.
oh
So
my
surely, right?
gosh, yeah. Like, it's a slippery slope.
Literally,
Yeah.
might be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just funny, isn't it? Like how it seems to be. Like it's kind of one of those. It kind of seems like an easy headline. Like there's it's too much bureaucracy, sack the managers, or AI, or it's just like a buzzword that doesn't really mean anything, but it sounds like you're kind of like thinking big, but
Totally.
it's just
Yeah.
more
Yeah. It's
rubbish.
like, oh, it's the future, isn't it? And I just
Yeah.
got this image in my mind of like a bunch of Tories round a table. And then someone says, like, oh, why don't we just buy robots? And then they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like that, who would that thought wouldn't enter the mind of a normal person? Like,
Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. And that bunch of people who came up with that idea would be a bunch of old farts who probably couldn't even unlock
Oh,
their own iPhone.
total boomers. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah, they couldn't tell you what a PDF is, but they'll buy a robot to look after them.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, totally.
God.
We're in good
But
hands, people. We're in good hands.
yeah, God, yeah, the future is great. So, and then there was this tweet that I did see, which is from at Yintubate, so Y and then Intubate. And she said today on how NHS does not value staff, a medical registrar left stranded at an off-site parking after a day shift at 10 p.m., locked out of the parking lot, unable to access their car to get home. They were in tears, had to call someone to pick them up. No mention of this at induction. No staff to let them into the car park. The next day had to be brought in by a friend. Discussion with car park staff. You should have come here. Car park admin office closing time 7 p.m. So that doesn't make any sense
Of
either.
course it was. Of course.
Yeah. It's not a surprise, is it? I mean, a lot of these things aren't surprising.
No, not really. I don't know. It's just we hear these things time and time again, don't we? We never fail to be surprised by these things now.
Mm. Yeah, it's
It's
true.
just
So the thing,
shit, isn't it?
right? I feel like you could tell people and that kind of answer, oh, you should have come here. Or you should have known, like you should know the kind of weird intricacies of when the different offices are. Like, isn't it kind of obvious when you see cars in a car park that, people might want to use them? And like
Yeah.
how
Why
the
is that?
systems are
Like, why is that an alien concept?
exactly. And why do we have to exist in systems that are just not designed for the people who use them? It just seems really
Yeah.
peculiar. Why would it take having someone to like perhaps walk home through a dodgy area and then getting hurt so that people to be like, oh, we need to redesign the system?
And that's it, isn't it? Because like it's not a new thing that we've worked until the late evening. It's not a new thing that we've done night shift.
Yeah.
It's just standards. It just never ceases to surprise us, I think.
No, it doesn't surprise me that it wasn't discussed at induction, but a million other weird things will have been, which are completely
Oh yeah, totally.
useless.
Because you'll do your fire safety. So
Yeah.
you'll get that boxed off. You'll do
Yeah.
your trust induction, but nothing about car parking or, how to actually do your job.
No. Right. Well, that's not very good. Poor MedReg. I bet at the end of a shift as well.
fuming.
That's like the last thing. So what's the next one? Do you mind talking? Oh no, I've linked this one. Oh God,
Yeah, and
I know
actually,
what
like
this
I've had
is.
so this has interested me a lot actually because I think we mentioned this at
This
the
character.
end of the last
Yeah.
episode. So this was about
Andrew Mason.
non-official BMA reps doing interviews, and whilst this person has done maybe interviews that weren't as great in the past,
Mm.
um, that I feel personally that the interview he did on Sky News, whilst I agree he's not an official BMA representative and we should be towing the party line, what he said was pretty
Fine.
spot on. And it obviously got a lot of people talking for good and bad reasons. But, and oh gosh, I probably will get some flack for this. I think sometimes I'm not losing faith in some of our union reps, but I guess I'm a bit skeptical of the tack that some of them are taking. And sometimes I feel it's a little bit difficult for me to like warm to the messaging sometimes.
Mm.
And this guy isn't an official BMA rep, but what he said was pretty on message and made a lot of sense. And it really seemed to get to the general public, which is, yes, they're not going to decide whether we get pay restoration, but it's important that I guess they know what's going on. But I think it was just interesting, wasn't it, to see people's
Reaction to that.
reactions to that.
Mm. But do you think it's because of the way that he answered the question? He did it well, but do you think it's the way that he answered the questions that's the reason that it got to people? Or do you think if anyone, because it was on Sky News, right? So I guess it could have been circulated. He's quite good at kind of circulating it. I mean, it got circulated loads by kind
Yeah,
of.
totally. And I think people will pick up on things that they don't. And I mean, like anyone, like general public, whatever, will pick up on things that they don't like. And I know, I'm not saying this is my personal opinion, but I know stuff about one of the BMA Junior Doctor Committee co-chairs was in the news about kind of the property that they owned
Oh yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like this. And I think people instantly felt that, oh, well, they're not a normal person like us. And whether, you know, Andrew Mason went on dressed like a doctor,
Mm.
that's up for debate. Where some
Mm.
people it maybe was a bit odd, and that's something that I probably think as well. But whether he maybe appealed more to the masses and stuff, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
Maybe it could be something to do with that.
I think the interesting thing is that there are people, as you say, like will make observations on things, and they'll pick up on inconsistencies, and whether that's fair or not is difficult. Like I think the kind of saying stuff about a person's. I mean, they did that with Mick Lynch, didn't they? Like, oh, you're getting
Oh,
paid this
totally.
much and whatever. And I think that's kind
It
of
shouldn't factor into.
no,
It
right?
really shouldn't factor into things.
Because like if you don't have lots of things, then you're like jealous, and if you do, then you're a hypocrite. Like you can't win
Yeah,
really
you
either
can't
way.
win.
No, but I feel like people were entitled. I think people are kind of entitled to feel uncomfortable about the fact that this person wasn't an official. Oh, he's a BMA member, but not a BMA
Yeah,
spokesman. I think people are entitled to say, "Oh, look, because there is so much riding on this, and there is this kind of need.
totally.
I think there is this kind of collective agreement almost to kind of participate in the strikes in the hope that it will kind of bring about change. And so I guess
Mhm.
people feel worried that if you get
Yeah, I get
individuals
that.
acting in a way. And so I just thought it was funny some of the reactions though to this
Oh
person
gosh.
saying like, oh look, you're not a BMA representative. Because people are like, you're being a bully and a dictator. And I'm like, what? You're like, you're kind of
That
like,
was
that's
extreme,
so
wasn't it?
weird. I'm like, you're kind of talking to a person who's got like 900 Twitter followers. Like he's just like, what? Like what's gonna happen? Like I just, all he's saying is
People,
that
yeah.
maybe we should just listen to like our BMA spokesman people or whatever. And I think the thing is that yeah, he got it right, but there was a risk that he might not have done, and
Oh,
it could have easily gone the other way, right?
that has been the case
Yeah.
absolutely in the
So
past. And I remember kind of listening to a Radio 2 interview that the same gentleman did and thinking, oh no, like that, and that it's a real risk, like when you've not had the official training and things. But I
yeah,
think people's views on both sides of the fence, you're right, have been
yeah.
very interesting.
I guess like one of the things though that I did notice about one of the comments that was made about this bully and dictator thing, which I thought was really funny, it didn't sit quite right with me, was the person described it as diversity of representation helps rather than the same old voices and faces. And I thought it was a really interesting choice of words, diversity of representation,
Yes,
because
that's a very good point. Yeah.
yeah, because I felt like it was misused in a kind of slightly weaponized way, because it wasn't really about like it's not what we know. When we talk about diversity of representation, generally that's supposed to be about being inclusive, right, and minorities
It's
and
not whether
minority
you're a
groups. And
BMA member or not, is it? Like
yeah,
that's not the diversity in this. So yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's
And
a
so this
very unusual
person,
choice of word. Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like well, I don't know. I mean, I've had a few interactions with this person before, and I have to say I've not been impressed with their behavior. And so I kind of wonder, like, how much of that was kind of purposeful, because it was a
Mm.
bit of a move. Like when you talk about like
Oh, I've
bullying,
just
and then you,
realised who she is, and I've got her blocked. I
yeah,
didn't. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the kind of mess person,
I
the
did
person
not
who said that kind of
realise.
messes are elitist. I just kind of think that it's a cunning use of words when you call someone a bully, and then you start to use like it's kind of all those things that to a trainee will make you suddenly kind of worry about questions being asked at your
Yeah, it's like the
ARCP and stuff.
professionalism word,
Mm.
isn't it? And
So I thought it was very cynical use of words, but alas, there you are.
yeah,
Well, let's move on because that person's quite scary.
yeah.
So,
Do-do-do,
oh, you added
do-do-do.
a link here, which is kind of. Can you tell me about it? So it's about the 2 week
Oh
wait being
yeah,
scrapped.
I still don't quite understand what's happening with this, but I know there was a lot of like discourse on the news and on Twitter and things about I think how the government was taking away some of the 2 week wait targets, and I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not an expert. I've not looked into all the details, but I think especially as general practice kind of employees or workers, whatever.
Hmm.
Obviously, the 2 week wait is a big part of primary care, and there's 2 week wait pathways for the main specialties. And I think it's something well in this region anyway. 2 week wait hasn't been 2 weeks for quite a while for certain things
Really?
because of the demand for services and stuff. But I think it was just something about the government saying, "Oh, well, we're scrapping these targets, and instead the new target is going to be something about, I think, having a diagnosis in 4 weeks rather than seeing somebody in 2 weeks." And not to do with the specifics of that as such, because that's beyond this very light-hearted and comedic
Hmm.
podcast. But I think it was more the fact that it didn't feel like this had been done once again in consultation with healthcare professionals.
Right.
And there was a tweet from Sarah Tennant that I think just summed that up quite well. And she just said, as a professional heavily involved in the 2 week wait pathway, why do I have to read about this in a newspaper article? And she was
Yeah.
quote tweeting something by Sean Linton. And I think it's just that thing because there was something with the vaccine rollouts a while back, wasn't it? That it was like people in primary care in the community were learning from the media what the
Yeah.
rules were going to be and how they were going to administer these vaccines rather than actually being told themselves. And it's just classic like government behavior, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Always the last to know.
Right. I remember like when there was that kind of a media campaign about strokes, like they did that fast
Yeah.
thing, and they were like, you need to kind of have assessment within this amount of time. And I remember like one of my good friends is like involved in like a stroke pathway, and he was like, what? Like we don't know where this is coming from, and it just
Tell me
seems
again.
like. Yeah, literally, there's like a group of people like bright ideas, not going to give any investment or whatever, or if they are, like it's usually like lagging far, far behind,
Yeah.
and they just seem to just kind of spout stuff that they think will make headlines, and that's it. And I don't know, like,
Mm.
do you feel like we're able to like call people out on this anymore? As I just feel like it's just happened so often, they're just like, well, just carry on, like and
Yeah, I don't know
can't.
because I think like these people like the shit just doesn't stick. Like I don't know how they just get
Mm,
away with it constantly. And whenever we do kind of, I feel like there's uproar, like nothing seems to happen. And I've noticed people kind of say that these things that garner like attention and people debating and stuff often simultaneously come out at the same time as something else, which they're like trying to not cover up. That sounds very like
yeah,
paranoid, but it's like to
no,
take
no,
the heat off something else, perhaps.
yeah,
And I don't know. I don't know whether it's just another piece of evidence as to how kind of dysfunctional our country is and how it's being run at the moment. But I don't know. You just assume that like the people actually who need to know these things would know from the actual policy rather than just reading it in a quote tweet from Sean Linton. I don't know. Is that expecting too much? Maybe it is.
I think so. Apparently, it is.
Apparently, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one embarrassment. I mean, it kind of like leads on though to kind of like messaging, because there were a few like surprising messages from Twitter accounts where people were, well, these like doctors coming out and saying that they voted Tory, and I have to say I was surprised to see that like on social media as well. Like
I don't
finding
think I'd ever, if that was me, like, I don't think I'd ever
ever admit to
admit.
it. It's
Like,
awful, isn't
no.
it?
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
gosh.
I literally.
Can I be brutally honest about something?
Oh God. All right.
I
You didn't vote Tory, did you? Because that's going to end
it's
this.
worse. It's actually
Worse. Oh
worse.
my God.
I actually kissed a Tory once, and I think I knew at the time. Like, I
You
think it was
knew.
quite. I think it like it was it might,
Were
yeah.
there
I think I
were there
must have,
signs?
yeah, like definitely definitely the way he spoke, where he grew up, the way he bloody spoke to me, the way, just the most, just, I don't even know how to
Gross.
describe it without kind of getting us cancelled. But it was also, and I refuse to believe, coincidentally, the worst kiss I've ever had.
Were there teeth
So
or?
there was just teeth and
Oh gosh.
sloppiness, and I don't know, just all the worst things that you would want, and being a raging Tory at the same time. Like, I just,
Yeah, that's awful.
that is one thing that I'm quite happy to correlate.
Yeah. Shall I cut that
But
out? Actually, do you want people to know that you kissed a Tory? That's
or
messed up.
if anyone knows of any support groups of things that, if that's something, if that's something that's happened
Yeah.
to you as well, get in touch. But no, it's just strange how, like, no, you're right, and it's, I don't know what people wanted by coming out and saying, "Oh, I voted Tory, but now
Mm.
I'll never do that again." It's like, do you want some, like, recognition? Do you want an applause? Do you want people to
Yeah.
say, like, "Oh, thank goodness you've seen the light"? Because
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, there was never an excuse. Like, I think this particular person, I don't know whether we should reference them personally or not, but
Mm.
they said they voted Tory until 2010. Now, even in
Yeah.
2010, I can't think of any good reason why you think it would be appropriate to vote for a Conservative government. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not the thing that, it's not the hurrah that you think it is, I think, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Well,
get
yeah,
at.
like no, you're right, because people are going on to say, well, what up until 2010, you probably didn't feel like it affected you, and then suddenly you felt
Yeah.
like the decisions they made were, I guess,
Mm.
is the only logical explanation for that. Because aren't you
Yeah.
otherwise saying something along the lines of maybe I'd consider to vote for them again if they weren't such, if this didn't affect me so much, kind of thing. I just don't know what the point of that
Yes.
is. Or somehow making them seem like at one point they were relatable to you. Yeah, you're right. Like I just
Yeah,
don't
like, yeah, and
get
it's
it.
like, oh well, now it doesn't serve me, so
Yeah,
only now
exactly.
I'm interested in trying to make it better. Like, it's just, I don't know.
It's funny though. I've seen a few kind of tweets from women saying like I'd never kiss a Tory or whatever, and then people be like, "Oh, you're kind of being closed-minded and stuff." And I think that's such a hilarious thing to like throw out there. You just
Exactly.
like it doesn't like hold up to any examination at all. But
Yeah.
I just think the goal of that. I'm so angry with you, Bethan. I really am. I don't
I
think I
know,
can
and
get
I'm
past
just
this.
like reassessing everything I thought I knew about myself.
Yeah.
I blame the world of online dating for that, and it's probably why I've not not been back on it
Oh.
since.
Do you know where they are now?
No, I don't. No,
All right, fair enough.
I don't think I want to know. It was a
Okay.
very. It was probably one of the briefest dates
Oh, fair
I've
enough.
ever had, and the being, like, very honest, the kiss wasn't the most, what's that word, like, mutual. That's it. It wasn't mutual. It was
Okay.
literally like, I did not see that coming.
Really? What was it in the date?
Yeah.
So was it a first date or?
Do you really want the detail?
I want to understand what's going through your mind.
Oh my gosh, this is just, so probably a lot of the story about the flapjack and the stuff like
It's
that,
not the
and
same
obviously,
person, is it?
no, but it
Okay,
just
all right.
shows
Jesus.
my unluckiness in this world of dating, and probably why I'm chronically single now. But yeah, so this guy I'd met online, and he ticked all the boxes from what I knew at that point. So he
Right,
worked for the National Trust, he
right.
was well travelled, he had lots to say, he had a dog, and I think that's
Ah,
probably what
hmm.
blindsided me more than anything. So our date was that he would come to where the area where I was living at the time, because it was near a coast. He'd bring his husky, and we'd go for a nice walk along the beach, etc. And then we'd go for dinner and a drink afterwards, and that was that.
Hmm.
So at that point, I don't think I appreciated that he was a Tory, although I will make that one of my opening questions from now on.
Nice. Yeah.
And as we were walking along the beach and stuff, and we started to express views, I
Right.
quickly realized that that we just didn't align,
Yeah.
essentially, because that is, I don't know, you just know, and I won't go into details, but you just know. So
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, actually, like we've walked quite a distance. Like the only
Yeah.
way I can get back is by walking that distance back. And I
Yeah.
can't just like walk off. So we carried on chatting. We went for something to eat, to which he asked if he could kiss me. And I
Oh,
just
you
said
asked?
no.
Okay.
Like, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was like, no, not really. And being the idiot that I was at the time, he was eating squid. So I just tried to think on my feet and said, oh, I'm allergic to squid, so you can
Oh,
never kiss
wow.
me.
That's
Which was just, well, maybe it was clearly a lie,
cunning.
because then, yeah, I thought it was quite quick, but
Yeah,
obviously
yeah, yeah.
not. And then when we were leaving said restaurant, I just kind of tried to make my getaway. And I said, oh, I don't live far from here. I had no intention of telling this guy where I lived, because never trust a Tory. But yeah, I said, oh, I'm just going to head this way. And he kind of like pulled the hood of my coat. And whether he thought he was being romantic and tried to like
Oh.
spin me around and kiss me, it kind of happened that
Oh,
way.
that's how it happened. Oh, fair
Yeah,
enough.
so it was
Oh,
very
God.
not good. But it just cemented to me that is something that I would never, ever do again.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
But yeah,
Gosh.
so join next week for more of my calamity dating
Yeah.
stories.
I was kind of wondering, like, during the
There are
meal, was he
many.
making...
Yeah, there are
Oh.
many. Yeah.
Like, during the meal, was he making comments, but, like, like, whilst you're eating, like, I hope there aren't any hungry school children around, because he wouldn't want them to, and all that kind of stuff.
But you know what? Like, I laugh because it started to go that way, and the way he was talking about like privileged people, and
God.
a little bit related to what we're going to come on to actually about
Oh,
people who
really?
are privileged think they're hard done by sometimes, because they have to compete with the common people like me, who are very white, widening access, working class backgrounds and stuff, because we have all the chances in life, don't we? But it's just that type of person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough. Good
So yeah,
riddance.
mate, I could write a book, let me tell you.
Oh.
Maybe that's how I'll make my millions one day.
It's all
It is,
experience
man.
and
It
funny
is.
stories. Okay, so like, sorry to hear that. Sorry for
Oh gosh, don't be
I
daft. We live
I
and
hope
learn,
he's
baby.
well.
We live and learn. I don't.
So there's a tweet that I kind of copied it just because I thought it was very wise. It just was very wise, and it was by @BRaesfull,
I love
BRAESFULL,
this. Yeah.
and it says accountability is sincerely apologizing and enacting changed behavior. You don't also get to tell people that you've done enough. People don't have to accept your apology, and you have to learn to be okay with that. And that's so true. That second part, I'm like, yes. When you apologize, you don't get to kind of figure out if you don't get to kind of dictate whether that person should be okay with that.
The whole essence of an apology, and I think this is something I've learned of late, is that it shouldn't be about you. And there's this amazing list. So she's written a few books, Dr. Harriet Lerner, and she did this podcast with Brene Brown once, and it was all about apologizing and what an apology should be and what it isn't. And it was very groundbreaking for me, because I think I previously was, and sometimes can be, that type of person that when I apologize, I feel so guilty that I then over apologize. And and I don't mean it to be like this, but it has then, I appreciate now, as come then it makes it a bit about you then, and it really shouldn't be like that. And she's just got this list of like 9 essential ingredients for an apology, and it's all those things like, it shouldn't include the word but, because it's like, oh, I'm sorry, but the focus should always be on your actions and not on how the other person responds. So again, it's like that thing you were saying, they don't have to accept your apology. An apology should always include an offer of restitution that fits the situation. So we have to want to learn to do better. An apology should not overdo. Apology shouldn't get caught up in who's more to blame or who started it, because again, it should just be, I'm sorry, and that's the end, isn't it? An apology should require that you do your best to avoid doing whatever it was again, because then you have not learned. An apology should not serve to silence. An apology shouldn't be offered to make you feel better if it risks making the hurt party feel worse. And the apology, and I think this is probably the most important, the apology does not ask the hurt party to do anything, not even to forgive. And I just, for me, I know it sounds so simple, but I think people are just rubbish.
Yeah, why is it so hard, do you
apologising.
think?
I don't know, and I think it is a lot. I do. Well, I wonder if it's a lot about sometimes people just think it's something they should say because
Mm.
they think, oh well, I've said sorry, so we can just move on. But I think sometimes doing a really horrible fake apology is worse than just not saying sorry at all because
Yeah.
it's quite. I think a fake apology is quite manipulative, or that's how it feels
Yeah.
to me.
Because
I
you
think.
almost, yeah, like the fake ones almost make the other person feel like they can no longer be outraged or be upset because the apology, the substandard apology has been given. So you almost undermine their kind of state of mind by putting that there. Whereas at least if
Yeah.
they haven't bothered to give you that crap, then, at least then kind of there's still a feeling of justification. Yeah, like I feel like ego like comes into it as well, right? Because often when people can't
Totally.
apologize, it's because they identify too strongly with being right all the time, and then they find it difficult to admit that they are wrong and that things need to change.
As we
It's something I'm
see
like
on
really
Twitter
obsessed with.
all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I'm very much an over apologizer. Like sometimes I feel like I apologize for my bloody existence, and I don't mean that in a dark way, but it's just
yeah, yeah.
become like ingrained. I just sometimes feel so sorry, and it's like
Hmm.
that's the thing. There's no particular reason, and I think
Yeah,
sometimes connecting with stuff like that, it actually just makes you reassess kind of it's think those kind of things should be sincere, isn't it? And it's
yeah.
like I think that whether it's ego and stuff like you said, there's a lot of insincerity about at the moment, which just causes a lot of aggro.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But I think like it can make you feel good by apologizing well because if you can redress that balance or like create harmony, then that
Yeah.
can feel quite good. So there is like an art to doing it well, and then when you do, it's a good feeling. So I don't really understand how people find it so hard to apologize. But I guess to begin with, first they have to admit to being wrong, and that's
Well, that's there's your issue.
yeah. So the next tweet was kind of interesting. I think there's been a lot kind of, well, certainly I've picked up on my timeline about kind of, there was like this a tweet from Kim Kardashian about kind of like routine MRIs and lots
Yes.
of like screening tests. And I seem to see that popping up lots on my feed. And there's a tweet from at Patricia underscore Ann as an ANN and then underscore E, which says, one of the first things I learned in my healthcare career is that if a test or procedure is not going to change anything and not going to change management, you don't do that test. Apparently saying this makes me a terrible person on the internet today. What do you think?
I think it's a very good point. I think we should think a lot more about what we do.
Hmm.
I remember a couple of years into being qualified, and I think when you're an F1, you do the whole gamut of FBC, UNE, CRP, LFT, blah, it's like a rote thing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
then someone said to me, "Do you know that each test costs money to run?"
Hmm.
And no, that is not something that I think I appreciated. And it just got me thinking, like, sometimes not all those tests are appropriate. And then, we got into this whole discussion of like, sometimes you can just get abnormal results. You weren't looking for something, then what do you
Yeah.
do about them? And
Yeah.
especially with that, like, Kim Kardashian whole body scan thing, that whole like incidentalomas and
Yeah.
stuff, and then what
Incidentalomas.
that
Yeah.
means for your life and your life insurance, all those things.
Yeah.
It's good. I think it's really good to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like, I'm just gonna like contradict myself because one of the things that I've come across, one guy I remember who had a Bupa health check. Now, part of his Bupa health check was that he had a heart tracing and he had bundle branch block, and then he went on to have a CT coronary. This is all like
Ooh,
privately, and then
yeah.
he got set, and then the CT showed some like coronary calcium, and then he got referred by his GP like to kind of discuss it. And this guy had no symptoms at all, and he's like, I've got a heart condition. And that's the way he was talking about it, is this like young, otherwise quite fit guy. And to try and
Mm.
untangle that, I've got a heart condition, it's really difficult. But at the same time, so that in like completely asymptomatic patients, I think I'm just not sure what good can come of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you do get people who have really atypical symptoms. And I do sometimes say, I don't think this is going to be a problem, but
Yeah.
I can request this test because part of our job is to reassure you. And I have had patients say, "Oh, if you really don't think there's a point to it, then don't do it." I'm like, okay, but
It's like, oh no,
sometimes
don't trust me that much. Don't trust
yeah,
me
yeah,
that
exactly. I take it back. I
much.
take it back.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
sometimes though, I saw Natalie Envy Davies who tweeted saying something along the lines of health anxiety is real, and
Mm.
it can sometimes do you not find that for people to feel listened to,
Yeah.
sometimes you
So
have to investigate them?
totally. And I see this a lot in headaches. So people who present to primary care with headaches, it's
Mm,
a big thing. And we all have headaches. And it often interests me as to why at that point in time has that patient now come to see us.
mm,
And I think being from a neuro background, I'm definitely not an expert, but I feel quite comfortable seeing people with
yeah.
headaches. And I tend to feel, just because I've seen many, many, many people with headaches, I know the ones that I worry about and the ones that
Mm,
I don't. And a lot of people in primary care will come to you wanting a scan because they say, I've got a headache, I'm worried I've got a brain tumor. Do you not
mm,
think I need a scan? And then, there is an element of things like, well, if you do have a brain tumor, often it's not going to present in the first way just with a headache. There's going to be other things. I find that reassuring, and when I've kind of said to other doctors about that, they find it reassuring, but it
mm,
doesn't really reassure a patient, and I completely understand that. We can't really book direct access MRIs in our area without having spoken to like an on-call neurologist first. And
mm,
sometimes I've spoken to the neurologist and they've said, you know what, anxiety might be a huge part of this. Doing a scan, if it helps them in the meantime, even though that's not our protocol normally,
mm.
like sometimes it is indicated, and there is potentially then a therapeutic
Yeah.
aspect to that negative scan.
Mm,
I think with anything, you do enough tests, you are going to pick up those people who
yeah.
don't present in a typical fashion. And I don't know the data as to how many of the people that they pick up, that whatever the finding is doesn't mean anything. But I just think it really is an interesting area. And I sometimes think about what I would want.
Yeah.
And I get very caught up about things because I like to think I'm probably, I want to be that person who's quite sensible. And I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah.
actually, I can see why I don't need that scan or that blood test. But actually, then when I have been experiencing symptoms, you can't help. Sometimes knowing too much is a curse, isn't it? And you
Yeah,
think,
sure.
oh, well, maybe I should get this. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting area. And I
It's
think
so difficult, right?
who knows what the right answer is? Yeah.
Right. I think it's kind of easy to dunk on people, isn't it? For
Oh,
like
gosh, yeah.
for investigating. But at the same time, I think in a medical setting, of course, in cardiology, we get lots of it like, oh, we did like a random troponin on this person who doesn't have any symptoms. And then I think it's different because then you're trying to reassure a colleague
Yeah.
about how this patient doesn't need like investigating and stuff. And that in itself is an art because, as you say, they do know of exceptions or they might have niche experience of this one thing that happened. And therefore, and then you have to be even more artful in how you reassure them.
Oh
Or like
gosh. Yeah,
threshold
and
for a
these are
CT.
the experiences that stick in our mind. Like if you've seen something batshit crazy
Hmm.
that you would never have expected or no one else expected, it's really hard to forget and to not
Hmm.
think about it every time that you see somebody with something that's vaguely
Yeah,
familiar. And it's like, oh, I
sure.
saw that person one time, and then it
Yeah,
sometimes leads you down a bit of a road
yeah,
that might not be completely appropriate, but this is the human psyche. We'll never get to the
yeah.
bottom of this.
Yeah. That's true. So what's this next one? You linked this one, the
Yeah.
being able to walk on the lawn.
I
What's that
think I was
about?
having a bit of a ragey day, but there was this tweet by Dr. Charlotte Proudman. She's a barrister, and I think she's got quite a following on Twitter. She's won Women in Law awards, and I see her kind of tweet a bit about
Oh
equality and
yeah.
stuff. But she tweeted, and it was like a picture of her on a lawn outside a college. So she said, as my cousin took this picture of me in King's College, Cambridge, a white male student shouted, if they catch you, you'll get chucked out. I sharply told him I belong here. My portrait hangs in the college chapel, not his. And it was just a bit of this dig of like, well, I'm an alumni, so I'm allowed to walk on this lawn. And there's some rule about walking on the lawn is only allowed if you're a senior member of the college or if you're a fellow of the college, so not normal students, essentially. And I agree, there's obviously, it's a typical, maybe it's a male thing and saying, oh, it's a woman on
Not
the
allowed to
lawn,
do
she
that.
couldn't possibly be a fellow or a senior.
Yeah.
And but it was the way that it all came about, and it was just like someone said that it just felt like she was saying, I get to walk on the grass because I'm a middle class academic. It was just from both sides. It was just
Amazing.
not, yeah, an argument that I just thought like, oh shit, are we actually arguing over?
Someone
Like,
walking on some grass.
it was just so first world that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Where's the
and it was,
harm? Where's the harm?
yeah, exactly. And it just made me laugh because how it did seem to take that turn of like, oh
God.
no, darling, like have you not seen my portrait on the chapel wall? Like
Yeah,
it was just,
Jesus.
yeah. And I just thought, you know what? Some people live in a very different world to the rest of us.
Yeah, what a bunch of
Yeah.
toffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never walk on that lawn.
Well, that is kind of infuriating in its own way, isn't it? Because, yeah, as you say, there's just so many bigger problems, and that's like.
Yeah.
But isn't it funny how stuff on like Twitter can just like spiral off, like to
I
mean
know
like
that.
how many like, and you're like,
I
what?
think it's
Only
like what we were saying last week, isn't it? Like sometimes you just find yourself in the middle of something, and because of that pace of Twitter, sometimes it can be a relief that, like, I think if that was me and I was in that kind of position, I'd be mortified. But
Yeah.
then, like, until you'd mentioned it, I'd forgotten about that tweet already. I'd forgotten that I linked that to this podcast.
Yeah, but at that moment in time, that was big.
At that moment, at that moment in time, it got me riled up. Yes.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I know that sensation very, very well. So speaking of which, there's this kind of journalist called Amanda Patel, who of course is a Daily Mail
let's say
columnist.
journalist in the looser sense.
Yeah, of God, just writes for a rag. You rag. So she wrote, "How do you sleep at night knowing you are endangering patients when you've already been offered a pay deal way above other workers? Striking junior doctors will cost the NHS an extra $1 billion by demanding a 35% pay rise. This is on top of the 20.5 billion the government has put into the." Oh, she pays. Of course, she pays for Twitter, so there's more. This is on top of the 20.5 billion the govs have put into the NHS, adding to the 180 billion budget. The NHS also has 764,370 cancelled appointments, including 40,000 cancer patients with waiting lists now at 7.6 million. So better go on and pay us properly then. But anyway, someone's replied saying you should do a night shift hours wise, if all else, and then post what you've experienced. Be honest. And she follows up with, "You honestly don't think I've worked throughout the night tons of times working in politics?"
Because it's just the same, innit, bruv? It's just the same.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Just thinking up those robot carers. Who do you think is coming up with these great ideas?
Yeah, so I'll just be up all night waiting for the votes to come in and be counted.
Yeah.
But do you know what? That's totally the same as doing like a night shift in peds. It's
eat
totally
out to help out. Come on, man.
Mate, of course.
Yeah.
What are we even on about? Come on.
I don't know. The thing is that
respect to the rag journalists. Come on.
Absolutely. I saw Dr. Ruby, who offered just wisdom always, and it was something like, there was no point trying to have a discourse with these people because you won't change them. They just don't have the will to change.
No, I like that.
But yeah, that one was pretty rage-inducing.
I thought that even crossed her mind to say that comparison's fair.
Comparison,
to make.
It makes you wonder. I wonder what she thinks happens. What do doctors really do?
And that's a very good point. I do genuinely think people don't get it. So, I've none of my family are medical, but I remember qualifying and saying I'm on call and them just assuming that as an F1 I'd be sat at home just answering a phone call about something. And I'm like, no, I'm in work for 12 hours all throughout the night. And actually that it's non-stop. When you're not in that world, that's what people can think. But it's not to say we are trying to tell people. And as a journalist journalist in speech marks, but as a journalist for a big kind of paper, you're not even trying to figure out what we actually do.
No.
It doesn't fit your narrative at the end of the day, does it? So
exactly, just the ideas that pop into their head and they just put it out there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's all thought diarrhea.
Did you see the tweet that was from Evelyn Menser, so at Eve Osh, which said, "Toxic and on accounts are curious. They spew their hateful bile and wonder why no one wants to engage with them. I maintain they're bona fide." Oh, I said that right. Cowards who lack integrity. Bona fide. Oh my God. I ruined that. Anyway,
I think you probably said it the real Latin way, and I've just said it the I'm bastardized British way.
Well, I don't know. I'm terrible at kind of getting the pronunciation of stuff right. Cowards who lack integrity. There's always an element of racism, sexism, misogynoir, queerphobia, or whatever takes their hateful fancy. And Kayode replied saying, "It's the entitlement to your time for me." And I definitely find that with Twitter. The kind of name bunch of numbers who'll come out with stuff and you're like, what? Where have you got that from? And then they're like, oh, and then sometimes it gets people who are like, your agenda. I've never interacted before. What the hell do you know about me and my agenda and stuff?
Totally.
But then,
no, I think she's like, well, I adore Miss Menser. I think everything she tweets is amazing, and that's spot on, isn't it? Because I think there's a lot of toxic anonymous accounts who I just cannot look again, and I'll block on site.
Yeah.
But it is curious because there is something behind it. And like Coyote saying, it's like they try and it's like almost like a bait for engagement.
Yeah.
And it's like they know what your answer is going to be, but you give time, like he said, and you respond, and then more just swoop on. And it's like this thing, this like rehearsed thing that they do all the time. But that's what they obviously think they're entitled to.
Yeah, and just so true. Like you can't win, right? But I still keep finding myself replying to them. Annoyingly, I just can't stop. I think it's the desire to end with a funny
Yeah.
takedown.
I totally get that. And normally I'm someone who I like to have the last word, but I think
Yeah.
I've blocked so many of them now that I've just
Yeah.
created this like echo chamber.
No, fair enough. It's a safe place, right?
Yeah.
But do you see, like on Twitter today, there's Elon Musk was tweeting about how he's going to remove the block feature. That's
Yeah, I
terrifying, isn't
saw
it?
that. That is awful. Yeah, and I saw a lot of people who I would follow who have said if that comes in, I'm off, and that I just really sad because like it's a safety thing at the end of the day, and we see it sometimes when you like when someone like tweets. COVID's been the big one, and I feel like every time I've tweeted about Donut Guy or COVID, like they all just like swoop en masse, and I'm quite hasty to do like a mega block or whatever, and it does work to kind of keep the riffraff away.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it could turn into like a very, very different place if that comes in.
Do you think? I mean, really though, like I think the number. So I've joined Threads, and I have to say I haven't kind of been super consistent with it because it kind of
I
has.
joined it and I've not been back since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it for me, I think it's the Instagram problem, which is that I feel like there's a bit more pressure to kind of post pictures of yourself. I don't know. I feel like it's a bit more kind of, there's
I
more
just
sheen
don't
to
think
it
I just don't have the bandwidth. Like I noticed
too.
that I probably used to use like Facebook. I was going to say in the olden days, but and then when I kind of started using Twitter more, like during COVID to try and connect with other people, I just noticed that I seem to have like the mental capacity for one, and then it just like I noticed that I hardly use Facebook now, and I think I just struggle just generally to
Keep
keep
up
on top
both.
of more than one. And for me, I think Twitter just gives me more of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I will dip in and out of maybe I hardly ever go on Instagram, but Facebook and stuff. And I just don't know what it is. That's just what the particular feature is that's keeping me on that one platform.
Yeah. I think it is difficult, right? And you've also, like, you would have spent time kind of really kind of cultivating your circle and the people you
Yeah.
follow and the people who follow you and whatever, and they kind of because there may be people that you don't want to follow you or you don't want to kind of hear from or reply to who you've blocked, or you've kind of got there, and then to kind of the kind of feeling of having to like start that again.
Yeah, it does take. Yeah, I don't think I realised how much work it takes.
Yeah,
Actually, you're
right.
right. Yeah.
Because which is why I wonder, like, if they did remove the block function, like whether people would still be like, "Oh God," and then kind of just put up, because it's just slowly been getting worse, hasn't it? And,
Yeah, it has
there's lots
been.
more
There
ads
has
in
been
the
some
feed.
shift. Yeah,
I guess I've run.
definitely.
I was like,
Food for thought, mate. Food for
yeah.
thought.
So, speaking of food for thought, there was that tweet from Dom Pimenta, who used to be a cardiology reg, but now I think he's kind of he's very much, and he's an AI researcher. Oh my gosh,
I
CEO of
didn't realise
Tortoise.
that. That's a new addition.
Did you see, like, so his tweet was about kind of how much of our learning as a doctor should focus on rarer conditions. And he says, assume a physician might see 100,000 patients in their entire career. A rare disease is defined as a disease that affects less than 1 in 200,000 of the population. So what is the approximate chance a doctor will see a rare disease patient in their career? And most people voted for less than 0.5%, but the other options were 50% and greater than 99%. And then he said, and based on your answer above, what percentage of time should be spent teaching rare diseases versus other diseases at medical school? And people said either less than 1%, less than 10%, which is what most people voted for. Then another option was no separation, which got 30% of the vote. What do you think?
So this really interested me because I think I was thinking about what I've seen and what I do kind of thing. And I don't know what it should be measured on, but I don't think the incidence of a disease should determine proportionally how much time it gets when it's taught in medical school. But I don't know what other measure I would use. I guess maybe like the potential impact or the
No, yeah.
outcome or the fatality. But it got me thinking because talking about headaches again, just because I like the brain. But I did a talk recently for some of my other GP trainees about headaches in primary care, and we're focusing on the very common things. And we had a discussion with some of the GP educators that were there about actually like how many of you have actually seen a brain tumor in your entire career. And someone was saying, well, I've been a GP for like 30 years and I probably saw less than 5. And then I think of what I've seen. Obviously, my judgment
Yeah.
is
Skewed, isn't it?
clouded, but I have seen hundreds and hundreds of brain tumors. And it's strange because I know a lot about that one area. And obviously in GP, that probably doesn't serve me from what I do need to be doing. But I feel like I'm very grateful for what I know.
Yeah.
So to me, like that has never been seen as like a rare disease, even though some GPs have said, well, I've never seen one. It's strange. And I think I probably wouldn't feel as confident as I do about assessing people with headaches and stuff if I didn't have all that experience behind me. But then knowing that headaches is going to be a big part of primary care, but then when I think about what I was taught about brain tumours in medical school, I can't remember any teaching. And I just think, how do we decide? Like, yeah. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just,
Doesn't
it's
it?
really strange. Yeah,
It is. Doesn't that highlight how kind of cruel it is that, I guess, in a GP practice, you'd have a certain number of GPs there, and they would all have had quite varied careers. Like some of them would have done GP training where some of their attachments would have been in ENT or orthopedics, whereas some others might have different career routes. Because I remember like when I did my GP placement, there was a person who'd been an ENT registrar and then retrained as a GP. And I think experience that adds to like a department. So you could discuss patients with your colleagues and you have this group of people who all have different experiences. That's kind of cool. There's a pool of knowledge.
And I think that's what I've realised about kind of speaking to fellow GP trainees. And I think, oh, you look a bit older like me. You don't look as fresh-faced as some of our colleagues. And there's people from nuclear medicine, there's people from cardiology. It's all those kind of things. And you think, gosh, if you had a practice with all those people, like you are it is. And it's like that you're tapping into all those things. And, you know, and it's great that we have access to like advice and guidance and stuff because it allows you to kind of speak more quickly to like, you know, specialists and stuff. But I think that goes along, it's a slight segue, but someone said to me once, like, no experience in medicine is wasted. Like whatever you do, you never know when you're gonna draw on it. And I don't know, it's just, I think like it's strange. So to me, going back to this boring neuro stuff, so I've seen bleeds on the brain, I've seen brain tumors, whereas I will see someone with a headache and I might not know exactly what it is, but I'll say it's not a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Whereas someone who hasn't seen that before someone could say to them, oh, this headache just came on really, really quick. It's really bad. It's the worst headache I've had. And without digging into that, might just think, oh shit, this is a subarach. And it's like the fact that you've not had experience in that might make it more difficult. So even though that's a rare disease, knowing even less about it, it's like counterintuitive. Like it's it makes it feel like it's more than what it is. And I just think that's a really interesting tweet because it's just made me think like, you know, if someone came in with chest pain, I would just assume everyone's having a heart attack.
Fair enough.
It just works both ways, doesn't it?
It's true. And I remember getting a call from like a paramedic who was working in A&E, and she had a specific way of like referring to. She goes, "I cannot rule out ischemic pain." She said something like that. And I remember the way she phrased it. And I remember thinking to myself, when she's saying that, that's because I feel like she doesn't feel confident enough. Knowing what it is means that you're much more able to discard it and kind of put it to the side because you know what it is. And you're right. It's kind of quite thought-provoking. I wonder what he's doing with that line of questioning.
I think it's quite, it made me think actually, because medical school was a long time ago, but there are, whether things were touched upon, I don't know, but I do wonder how, when the curriculum's like decided how it's decided how much time is given to stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because when you were talking about subarachnoids being kind of uncommon, I was like, oh, are they uncommon? Okay, all right, fair enough. And then I was like, Friedreich's ataxia, which is like what I spent quite a lot of time like reading about like MRCP and stuff. And I looked it up and it's like 1 in 30,000, which I guess isn't. I mean, that's quite rare.
There's rarer things, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think like I did a couple of years of neurology as neurosurgery training. I can't recall seeing like a case, but then I feel like I
No,
learned more
that
about the high medical
yeah,
school
yeah,
than
yeah,
some
yeah,
other
yeah.
things. Like,
It's fun, isn't it?
yeah,
Well, like, yeah, who makes that decision? I remember we did like a lot of biochemistry in our course
same.
because did you? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, we were the traditional type of. It was before the whole PBL thing and stuff came in,
Okay.
and we had like I think we had 2 years of pure biochem.
It's bonkers, isn't it? I hated it. I thought if this
Yeah,
medical school is
same.
this, then. But I thought it's
Yeah, I'm
because
off.
I thought
Yeah,
it was I thought it was a conspiracy because like one of the guys who was kind of quite was like writing our courses was a biochemist, and it was like buy my book type thing. So I was
oh my
quite
gosh,
cynical.
that's exactly what we had as well.
Really, God's
Like
sake,
the
it's like racket,
recommended
isn't it?
reading list just happened to be authored by some of the lecturers that we had, and I
How
was like,
convenient. Yeah,
interesting. There's not
what a
many of
nice
that
little
floating
Anna.
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So, like, we are kind of coming up quite close to time, but I did think we should probably give some time to the tweet that generated a lot of outrage, including for myself. Like, I was quite kind of shocked to see, the one about non-medical consultants. Do you see
Mm,
that? So there was a
yes.
tweet about a job advert in Blackpool, which happened before actually about non-medical positions, but the
Yeah, it's
outrage
not. It's
pertaining
not the
to this.
first time, is it?
No. And it's about kind of a non-medical consultant for stroke, I think. So it said
Yeah.
that so it says an exciting opportunity has arisen within the integrated medicine and patient flow division as we look to recruit 2 non-medical consultants, 8B and 8D, I guess that refers to banding, to our expanding
Yeah.
acute stroke service at Blackpool Teaching Hospitals Trust. We now successfully bid for our HASU, so our hyperacute stroke unit, and are now beginning to build a team to achieve that goal. As a non-medical consultant, you'll work clinically as part of the medical consultant rotation. Within the HASU service, you'll be a registered nurse or AHP with substantial stroke experience. You'll be instrumental in developing our HASU and our stroke pathways in line with the regional integrated care service. And so the reactions to that were of indignation. The answer to uncompetitive pay is not to recruit non-medical consultants, it's to pay fairly and competitively, was one of the comments I saw. But obviously, then as with most of these things with the Twitter outrage, then you kind of got the other takes on it, which seemed more reasonable. What did you think of it all?
Yeah. So I think like I do get the outrage, and I think I probably get it from both sides. Like I do remember being a trainee in neurosurgery, and there was things that I really needed to do for my portfolio. Like you don't have a choice; you have to do them, and because of staffing levels and things, it meant that I had to be elsewhere on the ward, and then some of like my other kind of allied health colleagues were doing things that I literally needed to kind of get signed off. So I do appreciate that people are worried and stuff, but then I see the other side of things where these roles might have come about, I guess, and I don't know, but if there is a dearth of consultants and they can't recruit, then uh, and I
What are they
agree
supposed to
with what
do?
they're saying about we should improve the pay and stuff, but
Hmm.
sometimes like the staff isn't there to recruit, and we know there's like loads of vacancies and stuff.
Hmm.
That I don't know, and I think what I appreciate though is our training is very different, and since this kind of job advert come around, and we mentioned like the PA stuff a bit last week and about the P and stuff that was missed, like the training is different, and how we are taught and how we think and how we critically appraise things is very different, and some groups might be kind of more driven by protocols and SOPs and pathways,
Yeah,
and I sometimes think as doctors sometimes we are more likely to deviate from those things and have that
Hmm.
knowledge and experience just
That's
because of
so
how we've been
true.
trained and what we've
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
seen.
And
Like
diversity
we
of
just know
experience,
that
right?
things don't fit that, often they don't fit kind of exactly as we would want. So there is that difference in that way. I certainly do think that nurse consultants can add a lot, and that's from both sides, for patients, for colleagues, for everyone, for themselves. But I get it, and I think Mark Toshner, who's a consultant, wrote quite a good thread that kind of followed that up and said, are you sitting on Twitter wondering why doctors are on one hand complaining about being understaffed and simultaneously incandescent with rage about the expansion of non-doctor roles? And I think that was getting at the non-doctor consultant kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it's a good point, and I think there's arguments from both sides. It's a difficult area, and I think it's an area that's going to be more and more kind of
Hmm.
around, and non-traditional job roles and stuff being introduced for various reasons.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, and it always seems to be that something catastrophic happens, and that's when all this like discourse comes around.
Yeah, it's usually with outrage, isn't it? Because I think
Yeah.
I think there was a comment, I think from the trust, saying that they had tried to get a medical consultant and they'd offered kind of golden handshakes and
This is
things.
the thing, yeah.
But nobody, and so like some of the replies are like, well, if you feel so angry about it, why don't you go and work in Blackpool's? Nobody wants to. I mean, they found it very difficult to get A&E consultants, and so it's tough, isn't it? But yeah, of course, if I mean, there's so many things that need to get better for that situation to change, like more training numbers. You need more people training in stroke because it's a problem everywhere. There is a problem with
It's the whole like it's the whole, what's the service, or what do you call it, thrombectomy service.
Yeah.
Because there was talk about cardiologists having to do this, because I think as radiologists, neurologists, neurosurgeons, there's obviously, I've missed the recent kind of discussions about that, but at the time when I was still in training, when we first brought it in locally, it was very much a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday service. It needs to be obviously 24/7, like, you know, every day, every hour, you know. And then it was like, well, where are those people going to come from to do these thrombectomy stroke patients? And I know there was, like I say, discussion about cardiologists kind of training in that, and whether it was radiology or neuro.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then obviously there's an issue lower down with training numbers. There's not enough training numbers to create these posts. So it goes far back. It's not just there are no consultants. Let's employ non-medical consultants. But
yeah, it needs like a crazy amount of investment, but also a crazy amount of like infrastructure to be. And like, I just don't feel like,
and it's going to take years. It's going to take years.
And there's it doesn't really seem like there's appetite from the government to address those things, because it's not going to be hard.
No,
I mean, they could just talk about pie in the sky stuff like AI and robots, but you know, they can't even set up the infrastructure.
Get the robots to do the thrombectomy.
Yeah, exactly.
Why haven't we thought of that yet?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I guess, is it okay if I ask you a question that I was like desperate to get your input on, which was about bath straining?
I'll decide after you ask me the question.
Okay, fine.
Go on.
What is bath straining? Do you know what bath straining is? I don't think many people know what this is, because it is kind of.
No, and I live in the bath, so I don't know why I don't know what this is.
Yeah,
so I conduct all my business from the bath.
I can't say who this person was who kind of told it to me, because I feel like now I'm like shaming them, but it was so weird. It was such a surreal conversation. It was so surreal. And basically he was saying like, oh, like sometimes my partner, you know, would like me to strain the bath after I use it. And I was like, strain the bath? What do you mean? And so he was like, you know, when like you have a bath and there's like debris that gets into the bath to like strain it out. And I was like, so can you guess what my question, I mean, what comes to mind when someone says that to you?
But debris, like where have you been? Like,
yeah,
when I get into the bath, I don't think there's anything that falls off me
you.
to like,
right.
I like.
And then I was like, but why?
What situation are we in?
Yeah,
they're not toileting in the bath, are they? Is that what
no?
we're getting at?
Thank God,
oh,
no,
okay.
no, thank goodness, no.
I was about to stop the podcast there.
Yeah, hold the phone.
Too far.
Blocked. Yeah, move to another town. But yeah, so I was a bit like, but surely.
Oh, hairs. Did they mean hairs?
Yeah, so partly that as well. Yeah, hairs.
Oh no.
But why? Why would you? But then I was like, why didn't you let the water out of the bath?
Why is it not draining? Yeah,
why?
Are they sharing a bath?
Yeah, so like he'd do the bath first, and then he'd get out, and then and I was like, so she's like bathing in your dirty bath water. And I was like, oh, and he's like, yeah, like what's wrong with that? You know, we share like fluids and stuff. I'm like, okay. But then like also the temperature's not quite right? Because it would be kind of colder. And he's like, oh no, I like it really scalding hot. So by the time she gets in, it's just right, like, you know, mother bear. But I still wasn't happy with this. I was like, but why can't you just refill a new bath? Like it is dirty. Like,
thank goodness I live alone.
It's crazy, right?
Thank goodness I live alone.
Mate. And he's like, no, and then I was like, wait a second. Where do you, so obviously at the same time I was a bit like, but you know, it's, as clean as you might be, you're still going to be dirty. That's why you're having the bath, right? You're using that to clean yourself. And she's getting cleaned in that. And then where are you getting the strainer from?
Yeah, because it becomes like, it must be like the last person soup. Like they
Yeah,
get
but-
out. It's like, oh well, I've stewed a bit.
But what are they
Is it
using
a
to
net-
strain
is
the
it a
bath?
net? Is it a fishnet? Is it a sieve?
No, it's
So
a
they like
sieve,
literally,
mate.
you know, like
It's a sieve from
you
the
know, like
kitchen.
those.
It's gonna
Oh
be a kitchen
no,
sieve,
that's
isn't
made
it?
the cakes. That's made
Yeah.
like that's just the flour for the. That's the bread they offered us earlier, Tharusha. It's been made with the bath sieve.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
human
my
skin
goodness.
and hair. So I was
Yeah,
like, I
protein,
was
baby,
just,
protein.
and then you know how like as you say like to apologize. I was like, I was trying to offer up kind of.
Were you trying to make
something.
it sound okay? To
Yeah, and I said,
Like,
oh,
okay,
like
good lad.
I tried
Yeah.
to, because I know that there's like a cultural thing. I mean, I have to say we don't do this, but you know, like the vomit bowl for the house. Apparently, people use
the vomit bowl. Yes.
is also the bowl that they use to bake with or something. The bakery bowl.
Yeah, there is a sick bowl that might have been made a previous appearance when
As
making
a-
cakes in home.
So I was like,
economics.
okay, all right. So people do that. So I offered that up, and then I did also.
Ah.
And I wanted to check how rank he thought this was, which was for a period of time. I remember kind of wondering where Joe's toothbrush was. I was like, oh, there's only one toothbrush in there. What toothbrush have you been using? And she was like, that's my toothbrush. And I was like, oh, okay. So we've been using the same toothbrush for like fucking like, that's gross.
I think there are grosser things.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think the breath straining. I'm still like struggling to process this, and I might need to have some sort of appointment after that helps me deal with this information.
I just don't feel like it'd be clean properly. I feel like you'd have to.
I just couldn't. I don't think I'd have it in me to get into a bath after someone had stewed me.
Yeah.
When I think I'm in the bath for like an hour, at least when I'm in my office, well, that's what I call my bath. But when I'm in the office, I'm in the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not getting out for no bugger.
Yeah.
But like, I just can't imagine then. Because like, maybe this is like a Welsh thing, but we used to share. Like, I definitely remember as a young kid, either I or my brother would have a bath first, and then my mum would get them out and then put the other one in.
Yeah.
Like, I think I remember that.
Yeah, sure.
This was
babies,
like young. Yeah, totally.
Like
and
kids.
I didn't have things that would shed off me that would need straining. Like, afterwards with the baking sieve from the kitchen.
Yeah.
But the toothbrush, I would always prefer my own. But I think there are probably times in my life where I probably have shared them.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
but
fair enough.
Please tell me you don't leave your toothbrush out in the open in the bathroom, do you?
Oh, you mean near the toilet when people flush it?
Well, just because fecal spores, baby, like you need to get that shit locked away. If it's
that already just freaked me out a little bit. Actually,
I have this very formative memory from A-level biology. We had this super cool teacher. He tried to teach us peristalsis by eating a banana whilst stood on his head to show that he could eat it and still swallow it, and it would go up into his esophagus because he was obviously like upside down, that kind of dude. Amazing.
Oh, that's really cool.
But I remember this revolutionary thing where he said, you know, when you fart, you know, you can smell that it smells like a fart. And we were like, yes, sir, yes, that is correct. He was like, what you're actually inhaling in is that person's SHIT. And we were like, huh? And he was like, yeah, that's the spores. And it's like such a core memory for me. And I was like,
God.
no.
Yeah. That's stuff you didn't need to know.
Yeah, I've been obsessed with just thinking like that's in the air now.
Yeah. You don't need to know how that sausage is made, do you?
You do not need no.
Nature. I'm glad we're under that footnote. Great. We should nothing to do with our sponsors though, who we should plug again. So at SCRBS_UK, they put you in scrubs. They're comfort-driven scrubs for all allied health professionals. They are comfortable, durable, and good-looking scrubs, very practical with lots of pockets. Definitely check them out. I think they're launching a new range soon. That's exciting. And use our promo 2MEDICS, so TWOMEDICS 10 to get 10% off. Cool. Thank you so much, Bethan.
Amazing. No, thank you, Tharusha. I like ending the podcast with poop chat. It's the best way. Always.
Yeah. It's a nice end.
Yeah. Maybe we can make that our thing.
Yeah.
Corner at the end.
Poop corner.
Have you read about the poop knife on Reddit?
I have heard this.
Yeah. For anyone who hasn't read about the poop knive, just Google the poop knife. Your life will never be the same again.
It's like
apologies in advance.
They must be like cousins with the waffle stompers, right?
Yeah.
God.
Oh
I can't believe it. The internet, eh?
It's bad, man. It's bad.
Thank you so much for listening, and see you again next week.
Look after yourselves. Take care.
Bye.